Hey everyone, Julian here, hope you're well and welcome to episode 1 of the Learning Flask series. Now Flask is a web framework for Python for building websites, web applications, APIs and pretty much anything on the web you can build with Flask. Now I personally love Flask, I use it a lot. It's really flexible yet really powerful. It's not opinionated, so it gives you lots of freedom. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with Flask. Let's jump into the main machine now, and I do have a text-based tutorial of this and a few others. It's a new site, but I will be adding to it, so I will chuck a link for that down in the doobly-doo below. So let's get started with building a Flask app. So what do we need? We need a terminal and we need an editor. So what we're going to do is first up create our project directory. So mkdir app and cd into app. And this, we're going to use the same project going throughout this series. So we're going to build on it. So go ahead and stick it somewhere that's nice and easy to access. So let's go ahead and get a few things. First of all, we need to create a virtual environment. So python-mvenv. And then we're going to call our environment env, and I always call my environments the same thing, just keeps things nice and simple. So go ahead and let that do its thing. Okay, so we've got our virtual environment, now we need to activate it. So source env bin activate. And you can see our prompt has changed and we've got the little env letting us know our environment is active. So if we do pip list, you can see we don't have any packages, but we do need to upgrade pip. So pip install upgrade pip. Go ahead and do that. Make sure we're running the latest version of pip. Alright, clear that, and let's install Flask. Pip install Flask. Go ahead and hit return. Cool. So, a Flask app. It can be as simple as a single file, or it can be a package, it can be easy, it can be complicated. In this example, I want to show you the most basic version of a Flask app that you can get. So first of all, we need to create our file. So let's touch app, can't spell, touch app.py. So app.py is going to be our Flask app. And let's go ahead and open up VS Code. Come on. Sorry guys, I've got a bit of a bugging out on me. Let me try that again. Come on. There we go, we got there in the end. I don't know why this... Sorry guys. Right, okay, so here we go. We are in our app file. So what do we need to do? We need to import Flask. So from Flask, import Flask, and it's Flask with a capital F. Next up, we need to create our app. So we'll create a variable called app, and we're going to assign it this value. So app equals Flask, and then the special variable name. Now we need to create our root, and a root or a view in Flask, the two words are kind of interchangeable, is a decorator. So app.root, and inside app.root we're going to pass it a URL, and in this case we're just passing a single /. So when someone goes to our website and hits the root, it's going to return something. So how do we return something? Well, we write a function. So def index, I'm going to call this index, and then return and we're just going to return a simple string of hello world. So what's going on here? Well, we use the app.root decorator, and in the parentheses we pass it whatever URL we want to fire. So this function is going to fire when someone hits this URL on our website or web app or API. Someone comes here, it's going to run this function and return whatever we pass to the return statement. So how do we run this? Well, we do if name equals main colon, and then we simply do app.run. Go ahead and hit save. Now in the terminal, the easiest way to start a Flask app is to simply just run python app.py, hit enter, and you can see we get some information about Flask app, and it tells us to come to this domain where our app is running. And if we come here, we can see we get hello world. So congratulations, you've built your first web application with Flask, and it's returning hello world. And you can see every time I hit reload on the browser window, it's sort of giving us some information here in the terminal. We can see the IP address, we can see the date and time, and the type of request method that's being used. So there we go, it's literally as simple as that, but that's pretty boring. Let's go ahead and add another root. So we'll do the same as we've done before, app.root, and let's pass in something different. Let's go with about. And quick tip, any root in Flask has to start with a /. So what's going to happen, you know, we've got our IP address or our domain here, followed by /about. So underneath that, we need to write a function. We'll call that one about, and all of your function names need to be different. And let's return something. Let's return some HTML. Let's return a style equals color. Let's return something in red. Let's close that h1 tag, and let's just put about. Save that, and you can see when we make any changes and save our file, Flask will automatically detect the changes and reload, which is very, very useful. So now if we come back to our browser and hit our about view, there we go. So I hope you guys can see exactly what's going on here. We create a root using the app.root syntax, we write a function underneath it, and then we tell it to return something. It can be text, it can be HTML, it can be all sorts of things, which you are going to be learning about very, very shortly. But there's a better way to run the Flask app, and that's with environment variables. So we do that by declaring the following: export Flask app equals, and then the name of the app, and ours is app.py. And then another environment variable that we want to set is the type of environment that we're going to use. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do it and then explain it after. So export Flask env equals development, and hit enter. Now the difference between the development environment and the other one, which is the production environment, you never ever want to use the development environment in a production environment. So, you know, if you had your application running on a server, you never want to use the development environment. And that's because Flask will, you'll learn all about it in the series, give us sort of debug information. You know, if we've made an error in our code, it's going to show up in the debugger. And of course, we don't want just random people on the web to be able to see any of our debug information, because, you know, they might hack us. So let's run the app. So how do we do that? We run Flask run, hit enter, and there we go. So if we come back to the browser, there we go, that is running. So to quit Flask app, it's just Control and C. So we could, for example, put export Flask env equals production, and then Flask run, and you can see we get this warning here. the environment is set to production, and we get this big fat warning in red saying, warning, do not use a development server in production environment, for the reasons that I've just explained. You do not want to do that. By default, the Flask environment is production, just to avoid anyone accidentally running their app in development mode. Alright guys, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to show you. Maybe I could show you the Flask debugger. So if we, for example, put something in here, let's just give it a random variable, Flask run, and then head back to our browser. This should throw an error, and there we go. And that's because we're in production mode. You see, we don't get any of that debug information. But then if we export Flask env equals development, Flask run, and then reload that page, you can see we get this debugger, which is actually extremely useful. I'm going to make that a bit smaller. Basically what it does, it will give you any errors and it will just sort of throw them out into the browser. So when you're building your app, you can quickly see what's going on. So you can see here the debugger has given us this error message here saying that is missing an argument. And you can see here it's because we've put a random sort of argument in our about function and we're not using it. So go ahead and save that. You can see Flask reloads automatically, and if we come back to our browser and hit reload, there we go. Everything is fine. And if we come to the root, we get hello world. So let's go ahead and stop the app with Control-C. And there we go. So that is pretty much the most basic Flask application you can do. It's just a single file. You know, like I said, Flask is very flexible. It can be as simple as you want, or it can be quite complex, and we're going to be building on this going forward. So you'll learn all about how we structure the application and all of the fun things that we can do with Flask. So that pretty much wraps it up for this one. Like I said, I'll chuck a link in the description where you can come to the site and follow along in the text-based format. Feel free to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys on the next one.